Between spring 2016 and spring 2017, the Future Sound of London put out releases as FSOL and Aliases in a range of different ways, none of them particularly conventional. And things did not settle down as 2017 continued. As we will see today as we look at another couple of releases on Earthbeat Visions, A History of the Future Sound of London. We start with The Future Sound of London, Ramblings of a Madman Volume 1. Release date 16th November 2017. Clearly getting into the spirit of publishing, the FSOL digital book series continued in 2017 with the first in a run of 10 zines titled Ramblings of a Madman. First mentioned on the FSOL board in July, there was speculation about whether this would be a continuation of the digital flash book of the same name, first seen on the official website as part of the run-up to the Isness in 2001, or something new. Gaz posted an excerpt of the story Frippatronic Sound of London and the Big Radio on Facebook with images from the book, giving an idea that it would be more like a print version of the 90s EPV website. Release day came in November and included a baffling range of options. The 96-page A6 zine, the original format, shape and size inspired by a Banksy book Brian had from the early 2000s, plus digital download EP of 5 tracks. Plus bundles including a unique one-off A3 art print, no two are the same, and a hand screen printed hoodie of the book's cover. The hoodie and print were also available to purchase separately. Not bad packaging for what is simply a small book. I ordered a print with this one and received an A3 art proof of ISDN series 1994, a peeling wall photograph from the ISDN booklet described as ink on canvas, 9 foot by 6 foot, framed, signed by artist FSOL 3 Exist. Wonder who have those 3. The print also includes a shot of Buggy overlaid with the wireframe spiky. The book then. The cover features the original accelerator font with a shot of Vit. The collage style of the image with a hand-typed date, time of 6th of June 1994, 12:36 PM on the side is a good idea of the general feel of the book. Expanding on previous books, here there are numerous photos and graphics from the 90s up to the present, some familiar, many previously unseen, plenty overlaid with text, logos and other graphics, including the usual run of FSOL digital era emblems, circuit diagrams and other ephemera. Handwritten track lists, rough poster designs, scans of fan mail, EMS adverts, photographs of customised gear, images of the various studios from throughout the years, several of Lisa Bartlett's paintings, numerous press cuttings and countless other curios feature in the book. There is way too much to go to in a video, although there are a handful of particularly intriguing pages worth noting. Disc art for the then forthcoming From the Archives Volume 9, confirming the album's existence. A postcard from Buggy to Brian in 1989, a letter from Tangerine Dreams management confirming they would be interested in remixing Cascade. Given that it was 1993, I think we were probably spared something horrible by that never happening. Handwritten credits for a huge number of Z-Box tracks that are either unreleased or have been renamed. Scans of The Heads album, a tape by Brian's first band in 1978. Between all the imagery comes the main bulk of the book. Stories. 12 Tales by Gaz, several of which first appeared on the 1990s official site, some from the 2001 official store, one from the Dead Cities book, and a few new ones, all written in the same first-person style. They generally offer a wry, self-critical and pretty amusing look back on the band's history, usually focusing on various disasters that happened. Reality as foretold by a panoply of characters within the FSOL metaverse. The stories are Bugs, a story about Buggy's importance in the band's visual direction around the time they signed to Virgin. Includes the first appearance of the phrase wide angle, fisheye, anal, which appears to reappear many times throughout the decade, followed by a photo of Buggy from a press article. Translations. Story from the 2001 official store explaining the supposed origins of Papua New Guinea translations. The Ice Cream Man, subtitled From Brown Eye to Shite and Onions, Tales of A&Rs. A particularly candid look at the band's experiences with Rob Manley and his successor, the band's A&R men at Virgin, and a potential post-Virgin label deal they backed away from. The early years, From the EBV website, a tale about struggling to afford new gear in the pre-Passion Music era. Papa's got a brand new guinea bag. Gaz gets incredibly angry at people misspelling the title of the band's most famous track. Digital Networks ISDN. Text from the ISDN artwork about the concepts and philosophies behind the first ISDN tour. Cascade. From the EBV site. On the eve of Cascade's release, Brian is woken up by police suspecting of attempting to assassinate the head of Marks and Spencer's. Touching the audience. The only source of information about the Smart Systems Cornish PA, which I covered what feels like decades ago in one of the first videos of this series, complete with photographs of the band with Hamish and Graham before the show. Dead Dolphin. From the old official site, Gaz muses on whether a photo of a dead dolphin represents the death of ambient music. Frippatronic Sound of London and the Big Radio. A lengthy diatribe on how much of a pain in the arse the Robert Fripp collaboration on the band's 1994 Essential Mix transmission was, from start to finish, including unseen photos of Fripp playing in Earthbeat. Then Her Breasts Peel Away, a surreal fiction from the EBV website. The Absurdity of Life at 30 miles an hour / driving, the fictional speeding camera story from the Dead Cities book. The back cover features the now familiar run of herd-killing curves and EBV logos. The digital bonus EP series continues with a 5-track, 20-minute collection. Once again, this is an opportunity to release music without some of the limitations of VAT on it, as it was a free gift with the book. No information is given on when these pieces were recorded, although the general belief is that they were all new tracks rather than archive pieces. With each book coming with an EP, the EPs themselves were recorded individually before the release of the EP. Although they were later pieced together to form quite a consistent album in music from 3 books, this was never the initial plan. A lot of the music was written live using the Atari 1040. The Views series continues with Viewed from the Outside, while Fracti and Orrery are in the 2016-17 bleepy synth style. Overall, the sound is very much what would be expected of new FSOL material in late 2017. There's a gap between the Whispering Masses and Orrery, otherwise all tracks are linked. The entire EP appears on the Music for 3 book compilation. Unusually, Dan Pemberton is credited as co-writing the synth track Orrery and not the piano piece Viewed from the Outside. This may be an error. Viewed from the Outside. With the release of archived environmental views, it seemed possible that the Views series of tracks had come to an end, but only a few months later on, a new one appeared. The title, Viewed from the Outside, first appeared on the FSOL mix for Nemone's Electric Ladyland for an alternate version of Viewed from an obscure angle unrelated to this track. This piece opens the first Ramblings EP and Music for 3 books beautifully, fading in with field recordings, of which gentle synth pads and beautiful piano scales play. The field recordings are joined by synth bubbles, creating a rich, textured background for the piece. The Whispering Masses. The Whispering Masses is a dark track with programmed breakbeats sounding like a modern update of the band's 90s sound. Lacking the jazzier aspect of the 2017 calendar album tracks of this style, it feels quite different to anything else released at this point in their career. At the halfway point, these synth pads and reverb-laden samples are briefly joined by quiet voices in the background, while different sounds, synth noises and effects occur throughout, adding a sense of development to an otherwise fairly static track. The voice, suddenly I began to be aware that my spirit is coming out of my body, reappears in the outer environment. Orrery. A beautiful bittersweet synth track consisting of several intertwining ascending arpeggios. Thick crackling textures, sweeps of white noise and warm synth pads join the piece, creating a gradually developing track that feels organic and varied despite its repetitive electronic core. The title refers to a mechanical model of the solar system. Fracti. Fracti begins in environment 6 mode, or clicky drum beats and 8-bit synth bleeps. Just after the 1 minute point, however, live drum hits and unidentified percussive samples appear, and the track suddenly feels much more like one of the band's 90s pieces of chunky sample-based sound. The two sections alternate throughout the track's 3-minute runtime, creating an intriguing blend of modern and classic FSOL sounds. Episode's an odd track in that it's a pure ambient piece, in the completely beatless definition of the term, a surprisingly rare thing in the band's catalogue, and a very long one at that, especially by 2017 standards, running to 6 minutes. Utilising layers of field recordings and crackling textures, subtle string samples and occasional synth pads, it almost sounds like the background to a track on Views, or perhaps a closing environment on another of the band's albums from this kind of era, only stretched out far further than ever before. Despite its abstract nature, there's a lot to focus on, with synthy sweeps and gurgles coming and going, appearance of flute notes, some vocal samples, and even a mellow synth loop near the end. On Music for $3, it runs a few seconds shorter due to crossfading with what would be the first track from the second Ramblings EP. The Future Sound of London, FSOL Digitana, the SX1 Live Improvisations. Release date 14th December 2017. Having released a calendar album, a triple album, a collaborative album, and a book with an accompanying EP, one would assume that FSOL's 2017 output was complete. And of course, one would be wrong. In 2017, it was announced that FSOL were working with Digitana on creating 2 synthesizers. The first, the SX1, is an expander unit for the Symphony AKS, which, unlike Digitana's initial expander, doesn't actually require a Symphony to use. Thus, it's capable of a range of sounds similar to those of the classic EMS synth without having to purchase one. To give an idea of some of the sounds the device is capable of, instead of a quick YouTube clip, an entire album was made and released through FSOL Digital. The SX1 isn't the only gear on the album, as the accompanying videos show. 2 SX1s are joined by a Halia, the second collaboration between FSOL and Digitana, and something that hopefully will come out one day, with other gear also included, including the Dave Smith Tempest synth, and all run once again from the Atari 1040. A further untitled track showcasing the gear appears on YouTube, and a similar setup can be seen there. The FSOL Digital page explains the process. 4 tracks, 45 minutes in total, live improvisations using the FSOL Digitana SX1. Also includes 4 videos filmed at the time of recording showing the SX1 in the recording chain, in addition a further 2 videos as a bonus. A pitch and tempo is decided, a timeline is peppered with hits and noises. These act as cue markers to move the synth settings and sequences forward. A set of sequences were created and stored for random access. The main time generator is started, and the result is recorded to 1/4 inch, 15 inch per second tape on Nagra 4s. One of the very few fan criticisms of the material released between 2015 and 2016 was track length, with pieces often running for less than 3 minutes. The SX1 Live Improvisations goes a long way to making up for that, with 3 of the 4 tracks running for over 10 minutes. These pieces develop wonderfully over their long run times, creating immersive soundscapes that are easy to get lost in, and including a few classic FSOL samples as Easter eggs. The shorter track, Origin Flows, is quite different, being a still reasonably long 5-minute upbeat track with a bouncy rhythm and almost poppy melody. The 6 videos are interesting, with the 3 longer tracks represented by a static shot of the pieces being recorded. Brian's hands can be seen using all of the gear, making an unusually open look at a band known for being somewhat secretive. The 2-minute clip for Origin Flows is filmed handheld with effects over the top and looks more like a YouTube promo clip than a full video. The 6-minute live jam seen on YouTube is featured as a bonus video entitled A Stochastic Process, and SX1 Berlin is a brief glitchy video advertising the synth's appearance at the 2017 Super Booth exhibition. the videos do lead to one very pertinent point. These are Brian's solo pieces. Certainly the inclusion of 90s samples means Gaz is definitely in there somewhere, even if he doesn't appear directly on the actual performances, but these tracks add to the small but important pile of known Brian solo tracks. Given the purpose of the release, it's remained comparatively low-key entry into the band's catalogue, to the extent that it didn't even appear on the FSOL Bandcamp for a very long time. As I record this video, Brian has promised to add it to Bandcamp very soon, so by the time it's out we'll be able to see and judge him accordingly. And while it's not an album that I return to regularly, when I do listen, the lengthy tracks and atmospheres they create, particularly the stunning opener Optograms, are hugely enjoyable. The FSOL Borg consensus was that everybody hoped this long-form approach would feed into Environment 7 at least a little. Zerts. Zerts sets the template for the 3 lengthy tracks on the album, with chirping insects, slow, gentle percussion samples, analogue swells, occasional arpeggios and random samples. As the piece develops, percussion loops gradually build up, pads appear and disappear, and numerous different samples and sounds are triggered. It's not so much about structure as atmosphere. The changes are subtle, and it's best to sit back and get lost in the mood of the piece. It's probably the busiest sounding of the 3 tracks in this style, and suffers a tiny bit for it, with the atmosphere being lost behind maybe a few too many percussive sounds at times. Nevertheless, it creates an enjoyable nocturnal environment that's nice to get lost in. My favourite of the 3 lengthy improvisations, Optograms features a lot of melodic elements, including a harp-esque pluck motif that plays throughout, and layers of beautiful pads. A gentle, complex beat drives the track forwards, field recordings of birdsong and steam trains play quietly in the background. A wonderful atmosphere. Origin Flows. The album's pop track, Origin Flows, is faster and punchier than the other 3 lengthy soundscapes, features a pretty catchy melody running throughout. The pads in the background still give the piece a nocturnal atmosphere similar to the rest of the record, but the louder punchier sound also makes it stand out as a little bit different. Conscious. The darkest of the 3 lengthy improvisations, Minimally Conscious closes the album on a brooding note. Once again, it's a fairly repetitive track with subtle changes that creep up on you and get under your skin, creating an intense and hypnotic soundscape to close a much overlooked album. At more than 15 minutes, it's also by far one of the longest tracks in the band's catalogue. And we'll round out 2017 with the year's remixes and compilation tracks. A quieter year for odds and sods this time, with the band and Brian working with Touched and Detuned once again, as well as a favourite return for an FSOL board artist. The future sound of London, Sol AR Skies, released on Covert 2. The second Covert album from Touched Music, featuring 15 tracks from anonymous artists, was announced in early January. Brian popped a photo of his copy of the CD on his Facebook, somewhat letting the cat out of the bag that Ever So Well were involved, although given the lengthy relationship we've touched at this point, this was somewhat unsurprising. The fact that Sol A.R. Skies sounds like something that came straight out of Environment 6 gave the game away completely. The beats are actually a bit weirder than anything on that album, with a strange stop-start rhythm and plenty of acoustic drum samples falling a little closer to something like Fracty. Other than some synth pads, the melodic side of the track is limited to a deep, menacing bass line. Sound of London, Monolith, released on Unboxed Brain. Following 2016's 6 12-inch record Brainbox compilation, which featured FSOL's Obelisk, Detuned released a 7th record from the series featuring 3 remixes of Brainbox tracks as well as an exclusive FSOL piece. Unlike Obelisk, Monolith is on the darker and more experimental end of things, with eerie synth melodies, shrill glitchy beats and deep bass all fed through huge reverbs. Though clearly having some stylistic similarities with the Environment 6 trilogy, the harsher sound feels like a move into more sinister territory, with an atmosphere that isn't so far away from the pitch-black claustrophobia of ISDN. Nmesh, More Full of Drugs, rebuilt by Humanoid. Released on Pharma and Drug Full of Remixes. FSOL board member and successful Plunderphonics artist Alex Koenig, aka Nmesh, first worked with the band in 2013 with his remix of the amorphous androgynous track Radio Breakdown. Here, Brian returns the favour, remixing his psychedelic epic More Full of Drugs, initially for the bonus tape on the initial run of the Nmesh album Pharma, and later as part of the More Full of Drugs remix album Drug Full of Remixes. To the best of my knowledge, the only obvious sound from the original is a female vocal sample used as a pad throughout the track. Once again, the 303s are left behind, with Humanoid providing a dark, moody IDM piece, really not so far away from the Environment 6 trilogy's sound. Even features an outro environment. The track also later appeared on the first volume of the Mind Maps series. Karsten Pflum, Borg Acid, rebuilt by Humanoid. Released on Love Canticles. Another remix for a touched music release. This time Brian takes Karsten Pflum's Borg Acid and makes it a bit weirder, including a lengthy break for a distorted recording of someone speaking, and taking the jazzier, Aphex-like aspects of the original down a much darker, reverb-laden path. Tempo changes, screeching pitch changes, an Eastern-sounding violin melody, and a restless, ever-changing structure elevate a solid brain dance track into a truly bizarre slice of experimental acid. The piece closes with a clean version of the opening environment to Eyes Pop Skin Explodes Everybody Dead, sounding remarkably different without its huge reverbs. And on that note, we have reached the end of 2017, a year which I tend to think of as kind of the start of the era we're still in with FSOL Digital. Having opened with a few years of archive and alias releases, through to a run of new albums every couple of years as part of the Environments, things have now headed into the deluge of new tracks coming left, right and centre from all sorts of odd release formats, compilation appearances, remixes, calendar albums and just about everything in between. I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you enjoyed the music. Drop me a line down below, I'd love to hear about your thoughts on the music. There's also buttons there which will help promote my video and channel. You know the deal by now, this is YouTube. And then we start the pattern all over again next week with the 2018 calendar album and Ramblings of a Madman Volume 2. So I hope you join me then. One from the Dead 60s book.